Hi everyone, it's Elizabeth here. So I wanted to do this video with some thoughts in regards of society or people in general moving away from source and God. It's no secret for many people who have spiritual foundations. Now, obviously, it depends on where your foundation lies, whether it's within more religion or more healing arts. Um, it's pretty apparent and clear that we, as a whole, have been moving away from God's love, God's energy, and source. I do believe that history is repeating itself. If you know history at all through any form of time in the Roman Empire, you know that the more that they dabbled with things like debauchery and drugs and kind of more hedonism, society started to plummet. If you look at history in general, like the witch trials were some form of a social cleanse. Yes, they wanted to get rid of people who were from certain societies, or sorry, people who were like witches in their society, practicing magic and stuff. But it was also used as a form of social cleanse. And that's really when you start to dig deep into history and start to realize, like in various places in Europe or wherever, they were trying to get rid of people who didn't really fit in. It was just really easy to call them a witch, which is kind of things that you see today with some of the name calling. Obviously you have had mass genocides in various cultures around the world. Obviously, if you live in America, probably World War II is the first one that comes to the mind. So when you start to look at certain things like a global pandemic, it can be a form of a social cleanse that is the start to something that's not so healthy. Like if you start to look into any sort of philosophy, in Genesis, if it talks about how God created the world by taking breath in through the nose and breathing out through its mouth to create the world, and you look at yoga, where they talk about prana being, one of the most sacred things. Prana is breath in yoga. Breathing exercises are very much a foundational part of yoga. You understand how important the breath is. And now as you start to see things today, wearing a mask 24/7, especially if this is going to be the new normal after the pandemic, it's kind of like, this doesn't seem normal to me. What I'm getting at is life right now is a battle between the artificial and the natural world. And I think I'm going to do a separate video on thoughts on that. But everything that is natural and has created itself, can be considered creation from God. It's just the natural way of growing. It's the natural way how a bee pollinates flower, or goes into a flower, it spreads the pollen around. A natural way a seed from a tree falls and a new tree grows, vegetables growing, things like that. Those are very much the natural ways of living. And now we see the man-made world, which from my perspective is not the natural way, and it's not the healthy way. Creating vegetarian burgers like Beyond Meat and these fake vegan printed vegan steaks, from pea protein and stuff, that's not natural and normal. That's not the healthy way. That's a socially engineered way. Breathing into a mask is the artificial way of breathing, because you have to suck in more carbon dioxide. Anybody who's followed my channel, if you look at how my voice sounds over the last couple months and then compare it to in January or from last year, you will know that wearing a mask does and will have some ramifications. I am having chronic voice and throat issues all the time because of having to wear it all day at work. When you start to look at people today, the division of people and how divisive people are on masks and religion can be man-made. All of these things are going against the grain of what the natural laws and the natural spiritual laws are in life. A lot of people think that spiritual people do not support science, and that's not true. There are some people probably who don't. But the thing is, in science, you have to look at where the money is coming from. And so when I've talked to a lot of people out here in Seattle, because the tech culture in general, working through technology, is very artificial. It does program you differently. Those people are very, very different. They are almost like human robots. So, if you look at the human body as a computer system, like our bodies are the hard drives or the actual computer, and your mind is the software, you can easily get programmed through the natural methods and the artificial method. And sitting behind a computer screen and playing video games, it does lose some sort of warmth in the human body, and you become a little bit more robotic socially, a little more socially awkward. But where I'm going with the science thing is natural people who will believe in, the small funded research projects that show like ginger reduces inflammation and broccoli helps fight cancer if you have it. Those are considered pseudoscience articles because it's something that is very low funded. It's usually coming from a website like greenmedinfo.com. And it goes again, it cannot compete with Monsanto, who is this giant pharmaceutical, or big pharma, and Monsanto, who are giant corporate businesses who can mass fund research projects to sway the bias. So, of course, if it says GMO foods aren't bad for you, it's like people all of a sudden think that you're anti-science, and then there's more division and fighting that's being made. Social media and the internet is not natural. The tech industry, technology in general, has kind of ripped or raped spiritual law apart. The spiritual law of channeling, of manifestation up to the stars and God and things like that. That's what your computer does in an artificial way. It's channeling a signal from satellites, basically space trash that's floating in the air. So when you start to really pick the puzzles together and start to look at how we are moving away from source through the human man-made technological form of living, it's very artificial, and honestly, it's kind of miserable. It's why psychopathy and narcissism is more on the rise. And it goes against the grain of everything that's natural man-made. Like in the mask situation, I believe the virus is real, and I do believe the virus can highly affect certain populations. And I think that in order to not pollute other people, you have to wear a mask. I don't think that you should just be very ignorant and never wear a mask without considering other people's health. Like, there's a fine balance point here, but the one thing that the people who are kind of like anti-mask are fighting for is that this is not natural. It goes against your health. It goes against building, simple immune functions. But in general, when you start, this video is kind of bouncing all over the place. But overall, if you start to look at our behavior, the fighting, the division, the name calling, the cutting out people out of their lives just because they don't agree with masks or because they're a Republican, those are things that does go against the grain of acceptance and love, which is something that Jesus and God wants us to really understand on this planet. We are here to learn how to love, how to give love, how to receive love, and we are also here to forgive. You can still be friendly with people who don't have the same opinion as you, but they might not be your best friends. They might not be your tribe. You might not vibe with them, and that's totally fine. But there is no need to have to whitewash and cut a lot of people out of your life. But that's just my opinion. And then the internet's flooded with a ton of opinions. But in general, when you start looking at the pieces of the puzzle that come together, the pharmaceuticals, the fast food, the social media, it's basically, social media is a virtual reality. My reality on planet Earth is so different than what I see in the media and on the news. There's so much shit happening in Seattle, and maybe if I was living directly downtown, I would be having a different opinion. But I don't go to those areas because that's not what vibes with me right now, because things are starting to become so drastic. you almost have to just start to create your own joy and happiness, and that's where you have to remove yourself from negative situations. And I've chosen to remove myself a lot from social media. I kind of do my thing and I pop off and I live a natural life. And that natural life has been a lot more happier than the life of fighting online and just, going down the rabbit hole of all of this jargon. But, anyways, I don't know. We overall are moving away from source. And I think this has to do, if you just even look at divorce, like, I got divorced, so I've done so much reading and research on breakups and divorce. Like, we can't get along. We can't get along as humans, not even on a political scale, but it's like even as two individual beings. It's because we've been bred and socially engineered as adult children. When you watch reality TV or the television and all that shit sinks into your subconscious mind, you naturally become more reactive in your relationships and in society. And just look at what coronavirus has done. It's forced people in their home. Domestic violence has gone up. Alcoholism has gone up. All of these things are man-made forms of recovery that do not go directly to source. As I've mentioned in other videos, coronavirus was an opportunity for people to awaken themselves or to start to connect to faith and or to connect themselves to God through some form of rest, taking a break from the chronic daily work. So as much as it had a negative effect on the economy, we had opportunities to work on ourselves individually and through a faith-based culture. I lost everything just the same as everybody else, and everything has worked out. It's really bizarre how 2020 could be probably one of the worst years in people's lives, and 2020 might actually be one of the best years of my life, despite the virus happening. And I'm not saying things happen to people because they're not having faith or anything like that. I just think it's a balance between logic and spirit and being smart with certain decision making that has happened during these times. Or I just believe that everything in life will work out. So moving away from source and God, there's spiritual communities, like they're very, there are people who do yoga and they're polyamorous and they think that's enlightenment. I personally don't think that at all. I don't judge them for their lifestyle choices. Sometimes people have to walk into the dark in order to find the light. But I just think that we've been created to be monogamous. We've been created to heal ourselves through natural foods. I do think Western medicine has its points. It has saved our lives for a very long time, but I just don't believe that we need to live our life fully and completely through pharmaceuticals. I think we need to live our lives through the natural way, and when we need things like the artificial means, like if you get an injury and you need some anti-inflammatory, or if you have a heart attack, you have to go to the hospital and obviously get some form of drugs and meds to help you temporarily to get you back on path. But there are so many things today that we are living our lives through the artificial man-made world of living, like polyamory is man-made even, that does not, it conflicts or goes against the natural ways of life. Anyways, this is all over the place. Sorry for that, but these are just some random thoughts on a Monday morning. So thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and thank you so much. See you next time. Bye.